So, welcome to the third module on biocompatibility. So, I will carry forward the discussion that I had in the last module on the biomaterial definition and so on. So, let us refresh our mind that what is a biomaterial. This is an important definition, and these definitions are mostly like textbook type of definitions. A student or a researcher in the field cannot afford to change certain key terminology or phrases used in these definitions, and that will be valid for both biomaterial, biocompatibility, host response, tissue engineering and so on and so forth. So, a biomaterial is defined as the substance that has been engineered to take a form which alone or as part of a complex system. Let me substantiate this part of the definition. Typical drug which people use when they are not well, like penicillin is a drug, or simple Saridon as a drug, or some of the anti-inflammatory drug, we cannot classify the drug as a biomaterial. However, if the drug is incorporated in a polymeric biomaterial scaffold with an intended purpose to be delivered at a targeted site in an animal or in a human patient, then we can call this as a complex system, this as a biomaterials containing drug. Similarly, a biomaterial should have a specific shape. I have already explained to you before that natural bone has a very complex shape, and this shape cannot be described by regular geometric features or regular geometric shape. So, therefore, biomaterial necessarily needs to have a specific shape, and this biomaterial, the shaping of the biomaterial requires one to adopt specific manufacturing protocol or manufacturing techniques. For example, additive manufacturing is one of the technique, or 3D printing is one of the technique, which I will also discuss to some extent in the later modules. Now, once this biomaterial is fabricated or processed, it is expected to treat certain therapeutic or diagnostic procedures, or to facilitate certain therapeutic or diagnostic procedure by control of interactions with components of living systems. I have explained to you in the last module that living systems essentially contain proteins, cells, blood, tissue, bacteria, and these interactions, like interactions with the living system, essentially means that depending on what is the targeted application, like if the targeted application is orthopedic or cardiovascular, then accordingly one needs to see that how a given material will interact with the tissue specific cells. For example, if the targeted application is orthopedic, then one has to use bone forming cells like osteoblast or osteoblast-osteoclast interaction. Osteoclast means bone resorption cells. So, whether a biomaterial can facilitate the growth of the osteoblast cells, that should be the primary question that a researcher should address. Similarly, if a biomaterial is to be used for cardiovascular applications, so they are cardiac tissue specific cells, for example, cardiomyocytes. One has to assess that whether that particular scaffold or biomaterial can facilitate or can support the growth of the cardiomyocyte cells. So, with these two examples, I think it should be clear to you that this biomaterial definition, the inherent concept is more like application specific. Now, with the targeted application in mind, one has to find out that how a material can establish beneficial interaction with the components of living tissue, living systems. Now, having defined biomaterial, let me define now biocompatibility. As I said before, that biocompatibility is a core concept which drives the development of a biomaterial, and biocompatibility should be of prime concern or should be critically assessed before selecting any material for biological applications. So, first two definitions are kind of very old definitions. So, first one is it is defined as the ability of a material to perform with an appropriate host response in a specific application. So, this statement or this definition has some correlation with my last discussion on that while I was defining that biomaterial. So, essentially the biocompatibility needs to be defined in an application specific manner. The second definition essentially tells that it describes the compatibility of a material both in vitro and in vivo. I mentioned in the last module in vitro, and let me remind it again, so that you can so that you are feeling more and more comfortable with this biological term. In vitro means testing conducted with petri dish or glasswares or test tube. That means that in most of all the in vitro testing or all the in vitro assessment is to be done in physiologically simulated environment in a standard laboratory culture conditions. In contrast, in vivo essentially means the experiments which are conducted in an animal model. So, this in vivo testing is also known as preclinical study. Preclinical means prior to the clinical trial in human patients, one has to see the compatibility of a material, of a synthetic material with the osseous structure in an animal model. Now, these two definitions do not reflect on certain specific aspects of biocompatibility. Therefore, David Williams, who happened to be the editor in chief of the most prestigious journal in the field, that is Biomaterials, he was the editor in chief for more than 5 to 8 years, and he just stepped down recently. He defined that defined the biocompatibility in a much more matured manner, and the definition is it refers to the ability of a biomaterial to perform its desired function with respect to a medical therapy without eliciting any undesirable local or systemic effects in the recipient or beneficiary of the therapy. Recipient means this is the human patients, but generating the most appropriate beneficial or tissue response. Let me underline this particular term here. What I want to mean here, beneficial cellular or tissue response. Now, coming back to my two examples that I have given back. Now, if a material is to be used for bone replacement applications, if a material is to be used for bone regeneration applications, then the cells that you have to choose is the osteoblast cells, like bone forming cells. Osteo means bone, osteoblast means bone forming cells. So, therefore, a material which is intended to be used for bone regeneration applications must support the growth of these specific cell lines. But if a material is intended for cardiovascular applications, then the cells that one has to select is the cardiomyocytes, and then one has to do in vitro assays to see that whether a given material can support the growth of the cardiomyocytes. And let me also tell you that cardiomyocytes is a typical example of one of those cell lines which are very difficult to culture, which do not grow very easily in a standard culture conditions. So, let me come back to the biocompatibility definition. So, essentially a biomaterial is expected to elicit the most desired or beneficial cellular or tissue response in a specific situation and optimizing the clinically relevant performance of that therapy. So, now here the clinically relevant performance of the therapy mean that it should have it should demonstrate appropriate biocompatibility response in preclinical study as well. So, therefore, biocompatibility does not mean only in vitro studies, biocompatibility means in vitro and in vivo together. So, in vitro studies only can indicate that whether a material can have good cellular response, but in vivo essentially would also tell you that whether material will also have similarly good tissue response. So, cellular response in one hand is important, tissue response in the another hand is also equally important. So, now since biocompatibility is very important in biomaterials development, let me spend more time on defining this biocompatibility or explaining you little bit more details. So, this is a 3 intersecting circles as we can see here, and 3 circles, that common area or is this area which I am shading it here. So, one circle essentially saying that what is that patient specific need or what is the clinical need, and typically this clinical need is defined by clinicians or medical practitioners. Now, you have that another side, you have a biomaterial. Now, in biomaterials it is not that all the properties of that biomaterials would have direct relevance to clinical need, but may have some peripheral relevance. Certain material functions which is essentially defined as a biocompatibility property. So, this biocompatibility would be much more relevant to the clinical need. So, therefore, biocompatibility can be better described as a common area of intersection among these 3 circles, with one circle being patient, another one is biomaterial, and third one is that biomaterial function. So, biocompatibility in so let me explain it a little bit more details. So, biocompatibility needs to be first assessed at the in vitro level, that means is the cellular level or cell level study or cell level assessment. So, one would like to know that when you want to grow a cell, let us say cell as an eukaryotic cell as a nucleus, and this is your biomaterial substrate. So, this is your biomaterial substrate. In another case, you have a culture flask, and a culture flask you have certain culture media, and then culture media similar cells you are trying to grow. I am just, for the simplicity, I am just showing you this is a culture flask. For the simplicity, I am just showing you one single cell, but in practice you will have thousands of such cells which are growing in a culture flask or on a biomaterial substrate. Now, as I will discuss with you later, that cell surface has certain cell surface receptors, and on a biomaterial substrate, when you are essentially putting it in the culture medium, so this biomaterial substrate will also have proteins absorbed. So, these are the proteins which are absorbed on a biomaterial substrate. Now, the difference between growing the cells on a biomaterial substrate and growing the cells in the culture flask is that essentially here cell is growing on a material substrate which has certain elastic property, elastic stiffness property, which also has a surface roughness and also has a surface wettability property like hydrophilic property or hydrophobic property. So, essentially the cell material interaction or the way cell would function on a biomaterial substrate would be quite different from the way the cell would essentially grow in a typical culture flask. So, having said this, that typical growth pattern or functionality of a biomaterial substrate. So, let me write it down, typical growth pattern or functionality of biological cells on a material substrate would be different with respect to that in a conventional culture flask. So, these growing cells on a culture flask is in the domain of a conventional biologist. Now, this particular case, that growing cells on a biomaterial substrate is essentially these things I am emphasizing it. So, this is that more in the domain of a biomaterials researchers. So, we would like to understand that how a biological cell would adhere and function on a biomaterial substrate, and certainly this functionality would be quite different, and we would get a better understanding as we go through the course through subsequent modules in as part of this course. Now, this is that cell level compatibility one has to study at the in vitro level. Now, once a material exhibits certain level of functionality and which is appropriate or which essentially reflects on the good in vitro compatibility, in vitro cell compatibility, then the material can be chosen for further preclinical study, and this preclinical study essentially means that is the animal testing, and this animal testing will be done to confirm its in vivo biocompatibility. Or tissue response. So, you remember in the formal definition of a biocompatibility, I have mentioned that a biomaterial is expected to elicit beneficial cellular and tissue response. So, cellular response I have explained to you in the last 2 slides, and here I am mentioning that preclinical study and animal testing is essential to assess the in vivo biocompatibility, or in other words the tissue response. Now, prior to the preclinical study, one has to have some understanding that animal ethical committee approval is required to conduct any preclinical study. So, here one has to write that study proposal, that how to conduct this preclinical study, and what is the type of animal model, like whether it is a small animal model or large animal model. So, to start with, one has to do only the small animal, and then one has to go slowly to the large animal model. Now, small animal means it is mostly mouse and rat, and large animal means it is mouse, rat and rabbit. Large animal means it is essentially sheep, goat and pig model. So, these are like different animal models which are largely used. So, what you do, one has to implant the biomaterial in a bone defect, in a bone defect in an experimental animal, and then see that how this material and then one has to see that how this material essentially facilitates the bone healing. So, you have to first fabricate the material, do all the in vitro level testing, cytocompatibility and so on, and then you have to see that how this material when implanted in an animal model can lead to the bone healing. So, these, as you can see that all these biological processes are extremely slow in nature, kinetically slow. So, therefore, these animal experiments needs to be done over different time period. One is called short term animal experiments implantation, and one is called long term implantation. So, short term implantation is typically extended up to 12 to 26 weeks, and long term implantation typically extend up to 78 to 104 weeks. So, typically in a year you have 52 weeks. So, essentially long term experiments can be extended up to 2 years maximum, and long term experiments can be only conducted with the large animal model, not with a small animal model, simply because the lifespan of the small animal model like mouse, rat and all, they do not survive such a longer time period. So, therefore, one cannot do these short term experiments, one cannot do long term experiments with a small animal model. Now, once you do this animal model testing or once you are doing this animal model testing, first thing you see that how this material is integrated into the osseous system in an animal. So, this I will formally define more in terms of osteointegration and osseointegration later, but at this point of time it is important for you to realize that when you put this material in an animal model, then how this animal osseous system is taking or accepting the material. So, it is kind of one can also explain this in terms of biological acceptance of the material in an animal system. So, this acceptance is important. So, essentially to go back to all our discussion is that, so at a more cell biology level or at a more fundamental level, one has to first see that whether a material can elicit good cell level response, or in other words whether the application target specific cell lines, when they will be seeded on a biomaterial substrate, they not only survive, but they also function in an appropriate manner while being attached to a biomaterial substrate. So, if that question is being addressed through in vitro assay, then one can say that this material is in vitro cytocompatible. So, there is two things, is that if a material is assessed at the cell level only, then you can only call that material is a cytocompatible material. Cyto means cell and compatible means cell level compatibility is established. If a material is tested with if a material is tested in a flowing blood, or if a material is tested with blood and see that whether this material does not cause any thrombogenic effects and so on, then you can call that this material is hemocompatible or it has certain blood compatibility. One of the things very important for one has to realize that in biology one should not make any overstretching statements, in a sense like if you use only specific cell lines and you use certain functionality assessment on a biomaterial substrate, then you can safely state that material X is cytocompatible with respect to this particular cell line or this particular primary cells. Now, if a material is cytocompatible with, let us say, osteoblast, one cannot claim is material is globally compatible with all the cell types, because all the cell types means their functionality would be different unless you test their different cell types in culture medium, unless you see their whether their functionality is being changed or not, one should not comment or one should not make any overstretching statements. Now, biocompatibility essentially now can be defined that when in vitro and in vivo level compatibility. So, only by checking that in vitro cell functionality, one cannot claim that it is a biocompatible material. No. Once both this in vitro and in vivo level testing is over and it shows appreciable compatibility at both cell and tissue level both, then only one can say, then only one can state that this material is indeed biocompatible. So, from the preceding discussion, I think that I can now move on to the next definition. Now, from the preceding discussion, one can also say that biocompatibility essentially means with the compatibility with the living systems in terms of both surface compatibility. Surface means you have a certain chemical composition, you have a physical suitability to implant host tissue, and another one is the structure compatibility, that is optimal adaptation with the mechanical behavior of host tissue, and there biomechanical property is of relevance. Now, optimal adaptability means, like for example, as I have shown you in the last module, if you remember the typical example of total hip joint replacement, when a femoral ball head is being attached to the acetabular socket and this whole assembly has to go and fit into the hip region of a human patient. So, it should have optimal adaptability to the biomechanical properties of the host tissue around the total hip joint replacement. This is what I mean, I refer to as that biomechanical compatibility. So, all this discussion I think can be summarized in this slide, and I have made some 2-3 points here. So, biocompatibility is a application specific. So, biocompatibility is application specific, that is a material which may be biocompatible for bone replacement applications, may not be biocompatible in other applications like blood contacting devices. Second one, biocompatibility is a broad term incorporating both in vitro and in vivo compatibility in reference to a specific biomedical applications. And third term is that what biocompatibility should be carefully used if a material can support good cell adhesion or proliferation or growth. It is better to describe this property as a cytocompatibility property. Similarly, if a material does not induce thrombus formation when in contact with blood, such a property can be described as a hemocompatibility property. So, so last definition before the break is what is host response. So, the response of a host organism which can be local or systemic. Local means like at the point of implantation or at the site of implantation. Or systemic means that, for example, a total hip joint replacement during walking or running, the material that there is a friction and wear at the femoral ball head and acetabular socket interface. Now, once it releases the wear debris, it may not have any localized toxicity to the wire debris, but once it is transported to other part of the human system, then it can cause toxicity to the vital organs like spleen, heart and other places. So, one has to carefully assess that what is the level of toxicity of these finer debris particles which are essentially generated from the physiological action of this total hip replacement system to the implanted material or device, and the appropriate host response can be defined as the beneficial cellular or tissue response towards the implant material. So, one side you have the biocompatibility, another side you have a host response. So, these both the concept together will define that what is the level of acceptance or biological performance of a synthetic material which is not synthesized within a body, but which is synthesized outside the human body, and how it can potentially be accepted in a human system. Just one more point, that placement procedure or the way you implant the material, and that also initiates a response to the injury of the body, and mechanisms are activated to maintain a homeostasis. For example, whenever any material is implanted in a human in a animal system, it must initiate certain inflammatory response. This inflammatory response cannot be avoided, particularly when any artificial or non-living material is implanted into a living system. Now, the degree to which homeostatic mechanisms are perturbed, that means these homeostatic mechanisms are perturbed and the pathophysiologic conditions created and resolved, are a measure of the host's reaction. Host means that is the animal model to a biomaterial, and it may ultimately determine its biocompatibility. So, this is the last slide on the biocompatibility concept. I hope with this detailed discussion on this biocompatibility, now you have a much more broad, specific and clear idea about the biocompatibility as an important concept. Thank you.